So I've been doing a lot more beat making lately. So I figured today I'd share a few ideas, tips, I guess. Okay, so this example session is just the beat that I've been working on. It's very early in the process, so please be kind. Please understand that it's very early in the process. I haven't paired it up with an artist or anything for, top lining or any of that stuff. It's just like very early on. I spent like a couple hours on it probably. So I'm going to play the chorus so you can just get an idea of what the beat's like. So that's it so far. Let me just get my cursor to the beginning so the delay isn't crazy. So the first thing I want to talk about has to do with the drums. So these are all my drums here. I've kind of like concocted a beat using samples. So one thing that I like to do lately is I like to slightly move things like snares by a few milliseconds. And I learned this from one of my instructors at Columbia. So, and I've been really loving it. It can completely change the feel. And the way I do that is I'll select the entire track. So let's say, you click on one of the ones at the very beginning. So I'm just going to hit tab to go to the beginning of it. And, grab our tool, bottom half, click on it. And then you can just kind of like go out here and click with the selector while holding shift and you get the whole thing. And then what I do, you can see that I've already done it here because this is the beat line. So the starting point would be on the grid line, on the actual grid line for the beat. But then what you do is you just make sure that your nudge value is set to 1 millisecond. So minutes and seconds and then 1 millisecond. And it doesn't really matter what the grid value is set to, but your nudge value, it's basically the comma and then the period on your keyboard. So if I hit comma 3 times, 1, 2, 3, it brings it back to that grid line because I previously moved it over by 3. So what I usually do is I'll listen to it on the grid line and then I'll go hit the comma 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and then I listen to it that way. And then I will go 1, 2, 3 with the period key to return it to normal because period goes that way. Actually, this might not map the same way because of the camera, but you understand what I'm saying. Period makes it go later in time, and then comma makes it go forward in time, right? Earlier in time. And then I will hit the period button, 1, 2, 3, to push it back, and then I'll listen to that. And then I decide which one I like. Do I like this one or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the comma? Do I like this one? And in this example, actually, I'll just hit play so you can kind of hear it. Let's see. I'll play the intro. I have some vocals on here that are just kind of to demo the idea of what vocals might sound like with this piece. So they're not like totally lining up. They aren't perfect, but they're just kind of like an idea. They aren't going to be the final vocals. So just keep that in mind. But I'm going to hit play and do this so you can hear the difference. So listen to the snare.
Hey you, now I see through, 'cause I know what I found in you.
So yeah, that's the basic idea of that one. Sometimes I'll do a little bit more or a little bit less than 3 milliseconds, kind of depending on how it feels. But that's kind of like the starting point for what I've been doing. And I really love how it can completely change the feel of the song, the groove, how things are kind of swinging. It can have a pretty big impact. So that has been a lot of fun to do lately. And just so you know, those example vocals that I have on there, I just took those off Splice. And so the plan is, I kind of use that for me to get an idea of what the emotion can be for the song and how it can feel with vocals added. But then I'll often get, an actual singer, collaborate with an artist of some sort and have them sing over it. And they'll use their own lyrics, their own melody, all that stuff. So I'll have a version often, with these example vocals just for me, just for fun to work with. And then I'll take that off when I send it to people. Or I'll have a version with and without when I send it to people so they can kind of get an idea. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, I actually didn't do in this session, but it's the idea of layering kicks. So I've been doing this one for a really long time, and I really like doing this, but I haven't gotten around to doing it yet in this session. But that's the idea of, when I'm listening to kick samples, a lot of times I kind of independently listen to the low oomph, and then I'll also listen to like the high snap of the kick. And I'll kind of listen to those two things independently. And so oftentimes what ends up happening is I'll like the low oomph in one sample and I'll like the high snap in another sample. And I want to combine the two essentially. And so what I'll do is I will often use two kick samples, and I'll have two tracks with two different kick samples, and they'll play at the same exact time. But what I'll often do is I'll take one of them and I'll EQ out the low and just leave a little bit more of the snap in there. And then on the other one, I will EQ out the snap, the higher end, and leave more of the low end in. And sometimes I do that to varying degrees. I don't always like hard cut it, but it's a fun one. It's another way to kind of like sculpt your samples and kind of make them feel exactly how you want them to sound. And I've been really liking that one. I've been doing that one for a long time. Even when I wasn't really making beats, I would often do that with other people's music too. So, and I'll use that same idea with other instruments as well. So like oftentimes if it's like a synth or a synth bass or something, I'll do the same thing. I'll have a couple of different layers for different elements, and I'll kind of like sculpt them out based on what part I want from each one. So that's a lot of fun to do. Okay, and so the third thing that I wanted to talk about today involves MIDI instruments. And so often what I'll do is I'll start with something like a keyboard instrument, something that kind of fills the role of keys. So it might be a synth, it might be something else, but it's kind of filling that role. And I'll pick my chord progression, right? So I'll put my chord progression in, then I'll change things like the rhythm, by adjusting note values, note lengths. Sometimes I'll tweak, I'll take out the top note or something to make things a little bit, leave a little room for a melody instrument over all of this, right? But I'll kind of get it where I want it to be. And then what I'll do is I'll often right click it and go to duplicate the whole track. And then I'll swap out the instrument in the track. So for example, this 808 track, I don't know if I even have an 808 on this. I guess I do. So, this 808 started out as a duplicate of this keys. What I probably did is once it was duplicated, I probably highlighted all the high notes and deleted them and left just this low note for each one. And then I work from there. So I'll just highlight and hit delete. And so I might start with something like this. And then it becomes 2. You can see the similarities, right? And so obviously you can tell that, I've changed it a bit. So I delete the top and then I go wild. I start changing it around. So I definitely changed this one around. You can see, there are some high notes up here where it's like bouncing up and down. Usually it'll be like an octave or something similar. But so that's something that I use a lot. I'll use it for, sometimes I'll do it over and over to create a whole bunch of different instruments, not just from like keys to a bass instrument, for example. So I'll use that kind of structure for populating my song, so to speak. And like this one, for example, this is what I think I did with this one is I had this and I recorded it out onto a track. So I have the keys that I recorded onto a track, and then I broke it up and just flipped them and reversed them. So gives you an idea. And sometimes, like you can see here, I'll duplicate and try to mess with it and change things around and then decide I don't like it at all. So, then I get rid of it. Although in this instance, I think this might have actually been the source for this reverse keys because I have this effect track on here. I might have made it more extreme, more like reverby and ambient, and then bounced it over and then reversed it. That's something that I've definitely done in the past and I'll do sometimes. So yeah, those are a few of my thoughts, ideas, tips, that I use while beat making, while making songs. I hope you like it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Check out my Patreon. It's patreon.com/CatoNoise. We've been hanging out on the Patreon Discord server. We started a book club. We've been, nerding out, sharing info. It's been a lot of fun. So check that out if you feel so inclined. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thank you so much for hanging out. Okay. Okay, bye.